right. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all today. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. Because I had to buy a new webcam for the train. Because, I don't know if you remember, but the last time I did a live stream, the last one had, I don't know, it just kind of pooped out, I guess, but, oh, I meant to open, let's see, this one. Get to my channel, live stream, make sure the volume is down. Alright, let's see who's here. We got Brocky, we got Christian, Isaiah, let's see, or Isaiah, I'm sorry, Munzer, Kobe, the chat keeps moving, oh boy, what is this? What's going on? Fun Edits, Christian, Blue Ribbon Productions. I feel like I don't have as much space here as I usually do. Jeffrey, Andrew. Everybody says they can hear and see me fine. Good, good. Okay. Hey, Sequad, I'm good. How about you? Nick, how's it going? Bill says, hi, new cam, looking good. Thank you. Yeah, I got a new webcam, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the corner of that screen, you'll see that I was working on the tunnel. So the other day I had my father over to help me out, and we were going to be working on the train tunnel. Let me go ahead and get the water started. Yeah, so I had my father over, and I was working on the train tunnel. He was working on a new building for the layout. So work is commencing once again. You can see the train is about to go through the tunnel right now. But that tunnel is actually not going to look like that anymore. So I was kind of building the tunnel out, and I just kind of realized that it was just really difficult to build a tunnel with like framework in a curve. So I kind of thought, you know what, it might be actually better for me at my current ability level to build a straight tunnel. So I located a spot in another part of the layout where I will build a straight tunnel. But there will be a rock arch over that same area where I was currently working on the tunnel. So technically the layout will have two tunnels. One kind of man-made, the other one kind of just a rock arch. But nevertheless, they'll be there. So yeah, because a rock arch is a lot easier to do than like a framed up tunnel on a curve, at least. So yeah, we're working on that. There will be an update video to come. Probably not with, what do you call it? Probably not with time-lapse, because I'll be honest, doing time-lapse for these builds is kind of difficult. I feel like the time-lapse is never capturing the stuff I'm doing that's, like, really cool. It's always capturing the stuff in between that, you know? Like, I have to cut out so much of me just kind of looking for stuff because it doesn't... I don't know. I just yeah. Maybe I'm just not good at it, but yeah. So let's see. How's the weather today? Says Ozzy. It is raining and windy, so a little bit stormy outside. I kind of warned my friend Steve that that the rain would be coming his way. So, hello, Moonzer. Nick went to see Evanescence yesterday. Awesome. I'm glad to hear you liked it. Little Gamer says, perhaps you could do a video on what makes a ship a sister ship. That's a good concept, actually. I'll write that down because there's a lot that kind of goes into determining what a sister ship is. if you go by the definition of sister ship, technically the RMS Queen Elizabeth is a sister ship to the Queen Mary. But you'll notice that a lot of ocean liner enthusiasts do not consider the Queen Elizabeth a true sister ship to Queen Mary. So that would make an interesting topic. Let me go ahead and type that in. There we go. All right. Back to this. Jeffrey says, I just found out that Cunard is owned by Carnival Cruises. Did you know that? Yeah, I knew that. It was done about 20 years ago or something like that, that Carnival bought Cunard. But Cunard is still its own company. It's just owned by another company. Kobe says, what sandwiches do you have? They don't look like your regular cucumber sandwiches. Yes, I didn't have the ingredients I needed to make a cucumber sandwich, and I would have had to wash some dishes to make an egg sandwich. I just didn't feel like doing that. So I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which I don't think is something they would have served on a Cunard ship, but I like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so I'm going with it. Mark says, rainy and blustery here in southeast Queensland, Australia. First day of summer for us. Oh, wow. Well, happy summer. Whitehorn says, is it pouring or is that the train I hear? That's the sound of the kettle going. It's boiling water. Oh, yeah, Andrew. Yeah, you saw a video that was posted several weeks ago. Yeah, they did remove the Halloween mazes from the Queen Mary. There were some people that were like, oh, well, the Queen Mary's going to, still have its Halloween mazes. I was like, no. They removed it from the ship because they were basically like fire hazards, So they removed them from the Queen Mary, which is really good because doing those mazes inside the ship was kind of damaging the ship, and so, yeah. Oh, but I do have Queen Mary news to give you guys today, so I will get to that in a second. Moonzer says it's very cold in Ohio. Let's see. Sorry, the chat was going crazy earlier, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting to everybody if I can. Tyler says it's cold and windy in Avon, Indiana. Yeah, I can bet. Derpy says, what's a specific space on one of the two queens, Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth, that you think one did better than the other? Oh, there's quite a few spaces. But I would say, first and foremost, I think that... Well, no, do I think that? No. I'm going through it in my head to see if there's something I think... Queen Mary, I think that Queen Mary did a lot really well. I think the thing that's kind of a tiebreaker for me is the main hall, or otherwise known as Piccadilly Circus on Queen Mary. Queen Elizabeth had something like that. It wasn't as big because really it was only just a little area in front of their grand staircase. But on Queen Mary, it's a much larger shopping space. So the interesting thing is, the one on Queen Mary I like a lot because there's a lot of little shops and things that people could go in. It felt like a little indoor mall for its time. The one on Queen Elizabeth is not that big, and it's really just a square room with a staircase leading down from one end of it. And But the one thing that I will say about it is it's taller than the one on Queen Mary, because on Queen Elizabeth, they actually raised the roof height to be perfectly even on the sports deck. So everything under the sports deck, which would be the well, no, that would be sun deck, wouldn't it? So anyway, they raised the roof on the sun deck area, making everything on promenade deck have a little bit of a taller height. And so basically on Queen Elizabeth, all the spaces on promenade deck had pretty much an equal roof height, whereas on Queen Mary it was varying. So I will say that Queen Elizabeth has that kind of thing that I like, but Queen Mary's spaces are just grander in general. I mean, you look at the first class main lounge on Queen Elizabeth, it's really not that grand in comparison to Queen Mary's. Same thing with Queen Elizabeth's restaurant. The first class restaurant on Queen Elizabeth is not as grand looking as it is on Queen Mary. Queen Mary just incorporated a lot of ceiling height to these big rooms. So, you know, there are some things here and there that I would say, ultimately, I think Queen Mary just did better. But I'm trying to think, because I did come across a room the other day on Queen Elizabeth that I thought rivaled a room on Queen Mary, and I think it was the third class smoking room. I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, I think Queen Elizabeth did a better job, but I'm not sure I'm remembering that correctly. So let's go ahead and preheat these. Oh, whoops, whoa. Poured a lot out. Well, that's why it's sitting on a rag, because sometimes I pour too much water. We'll just kind of... let that warm up. Alright, let's see if I can... Let's see... Well, first, Doc, thank you so much for the donation. Doc says, loved the dog video. Anything that gives day in the life of vibes is so interesting. Yeah, I want to do more of those kinds of videos, like the day in the life kind of things. Let's see. Ottoman Queen says, what tea is it today? It is Earl Grey tea. Okay, so now let me just go from that comment down. Let's see. Evan Scott says, hi Alex, I heard the Queen Mary horn got tested. Really? Yeah, I don't know about that, but that's pretty cool. I do know the Queen Mary is very close to opening. So, Teresa says, what part of Orange County did you live and where? I lived all over. I've literally lived in more than half of the cities in Orange County at some point in my life. So I'm not from any particular area. I've just lived all over. Moonzer says, what is on the menu? I thought I just... yeah, so peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then I've got the chocolate-covered McVitie's. I didn't make another batch of Scottish shortbread, so I don't have that today, but... and then, of course, we got the Earl Grey tea. Nope says, can you do a What's Inside the Queen Mary video like the other YouTubers who did the What's Inside the Titanic video? I've thought about that, but that takes skills I do not have. Those people have computer, graphic skills, and that's how they did it, because that's what they do for a living. They work with computer graphics and stuff like that. I've never done that kind of stuff before, and I don't think I really have the ability to do that. So I would love to do that, but I don't have those skills. Hello, Daniel. Let's see. Sorry, just reading comments here. Just enjoy the music until then. Thank you, Teresa. Glad to hear you liked the dog video. Tyler says, Queen Elizabeth is bigger and longer than Queen Mary. Why was everything on Queen Mary's public rooms huge and Queen Elizabeth small? So it is interesting, yeah. Queen Elizabeth technically, by technicality, had more interior passenger spaces because they didn't have the third funnel like Queen Mary did, so they were actually able to utilize that extra space. But to my understanding, the spaces on Queen Elizabeth were more compartmentalized, meaning that more walls or bulkheads divided the spaces from each other. So even though there was more passenger accommodation space, they just used that to make more rooms. So instead of increasing the size of the rooms that already existed. So that's kind of why. And so it is kind of a confusing thing. Okay. So that's done. Nope asks, is the Queen Mary 2 separated by class like the Queen Mary and Titanic, or is the ship free to roam? The ship is free to roam, although there are class separations. So, basically, the class separations on Queen Mary 2 are mostly isolated to what type of room you have. So they have 3 different tiers of room value or expense. I'm not sure what to call it, but basically, like, the cheapest rooms are considered Britannia Club. Then there's Princess Grill, and then there's Queen's Grill. And those are the 3, Queen's Grill obviously being the basically first class, and those are the most expensive rooms. And with Princess and Queen's Grill, the only other added bonus you get besides a better stateroom is there are like 1 or 2 extra lounges that are only for those passengers, and then there are separate restaurants. So there's a Princess Grill restaurant for the passengers who are Princess Grill, and then there's a Queen's Grill for passengers who are Queen's Grill. And that's basically it. The rest of the ship is free roam for everybody. So, yeah, and I kind of like that. I think that's fine. That, to me, is not, like, the worst that classism can be, you know. Because you basically still get the rest of the ship. The only difference is that there's, like, an extra restaurant that you don't get to see, you know. And then maybe 1 or 2 lounges that you don't get to have. I think Queen's Grill also has a private pool deck on the stern. So I think they do get a private pool deck, but I mean, it's not that much different. It's like 1 deck above the other pool, so it's like, what's the difference, you know? Okay, so let's go ahead and empty all this stuff out. I only need to empty this one halfway again, but the other one will be emptied completely. Hello, Jimmy. On the menu today is peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I also have chocolate-covered McVitie's, and then we are having Earl Grey tea with it. Christian says, how old is Queen Mary now? That depends on what you count. If you're counting from the maiden voyage, the maiden voyage, it's been 86 years. 86 years, I believe. If you're counting from the launch, it would be 88 years. Yes. And if you're counting from when they laid the keel, which some people count that, if you're counting from when they laid the keel, she's 92. So she's either 92, 88, or 86 years old, depending on what you count. So I think the most accurate count is the maiden voyage. Because when she launched, not everything was on her. The engines, the propulsion systems, the steam plant, the funnels, not everything was on the ship when she was launched. So technically, maiden voyage, she had everything on her. So that's when you can start counting the time. But then again, that wouldn't be fair because, 6 years earlier, the steel work for the keel was laid, so yeah. Let's go ahead and pour all this. Just a little bit more. Okay. Top this one off to make sure it's nice and hot. And now we put the tea in. $4.29, so $4.30. Cool. On the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, Cunard served tea time at 4:30 p.m. So, I think by the time my tea is done, it will be exactly 4:30 p.m. So that'll be good. Very, very good. Carl says, I read an article today saying the Queen Mary will be open by the end of the year. Yeah, I think that's true. I've read that a few articles, actually. Daniel says, what's the news about Queen Mary? I guess I should get to that now, huh? So the news about Queen Mary is basically what's been posted on the articles today, which is that basically 75% of the critical repairs for the Queen Mary have been done. That's right, 75% of the critical repairs are done. Now, it's important to mention that the work on the Queen Mary has been classified in 3 different ways. There's the critical repairs, which is the most important. There's the urgent repairs, which are next up. And then there is the, I think they called it like low priority repair, but, it is still a priority. It's just a lower priority repair. But the critical repairs are 75% complete, which is really good. That means that anything that would be disastrous without, these repairs done, what am I trying to say? The most critical repairs are being done. That's all I'm trying to say. The urgent repairs are other things that are urgent in the sense that if they're not done soon, it probably would lead to problems later. And so that would be things like replacing the teak wood decks on, let's say, the sun deck, for instance, because those teak wood decks also help, push rainwater off the ship. If they're full of holes and they're rotten like they are today, that water can collect onto the steel plates of the deck and rot those out, which in some areas it has rotted out a little bit. So that would be like part of what's called like the urgent repairs. So those things will be done starting next year. Well, not done, but started work on next year. As for what's inside the ship, they've already installed the platforms for the bilge pumps, and I've seen the water lines for the bilge pumps installed as well. There's a photograph showing that. So that means that what will happen next is, starting next year, they will start actually installing the bilge pumps themselves. So everything is there. All the infrastructure for the bilge pumps, the pipelines, all that is there. They just now need to actually put in the pumps themselves. So that's really good. And let's see, what else did they say? That the ship, it would reopen with limited spaces available, meaning that like only certain areas of the ship will be open when she does reopen. But early next year, they're going to continue on with more repair work that will help open up the rest of the ship. So I imagine what this means is that when the ship reopens sometime this December, which I have a feeling they might announce the opening tomorrow. So I think that on the opening they'll say, oh, the Queen Mary will be open for Christmas or maybe New Year's or something, right? But when the Queen Mary does reopen, what I believe is that the areas that will be open is promenade deck and sun deck, as well as the stern and the forecastle deck. Possibly the isolation wards, but I wouldn't count on it. That might be one of the areas where they're redoing the floors, because those floors are just awful. They need to be redone. So it's possible that basically those 4 sections of the ship will be open when the ship reopens. But then throughout the beginning of 2023, more repairs will be completed and more of the ship will open up. I think they're hoping that before spring of 2023, the ship's hotel portion will open for people to stay on board. So, yeah. So that last part about what will be open and what won't, that's my speculation, but based off of the most popular areas of the ship that are also not really as affected by the repairs that are ongoing right now. So, yeah. But I wouldn't expect you to be able to take a tour, for instance, through the boiler rooms. They used to have a tour that went through the boiler rooms. I wouldn't expect that to come back for at least some time next year, because they did rebuild 2 of the bulkheads, which means that either they installed brand new, completely operating watertight doors for those bulkheads, or they didn't, and those areas are sealed up without easy access for tourists. So I don't know what they did, but I imagine they installed modern watertight doors to seal up those bulkheads for tours. So I do think tours will continue through those areas. But yeah, the extent of it, I couldn't tell you. So lots of interesting stuff happening for the Queen Mary nevertheless. I think we can all agree that all this in the end is good news for the ship. You know, but it's like I said, when the Queen Mary reopens, I said this I think a couple streams ago, when the Queen Mary reopens, it won't be like she looks brand new, but she will look a lot better than she has in the last 30 years. So, and that's a milestone in itself, you know. And the city of Long Beach has proven to be really dedicated to the ship. You know, in the past, the city has been kind of nonchalant about it, you know, or no, is that the right terminology? Just kind of like, you know, like in the past, the city has been kind of about the Queen Mary. And, but with the current people in charge of the Queen Mary now, because as you know, it is a city, so people, you know, offices change out with new people and stuff like that all the time. So I think with the current group of people there, they really do care about the ship. They really do want to see it doing well. And they also have an economic responsibility to make sure that the ship is restored and repaired. Maybe not restored in the sense that she like sails, but repaired in the sense that she can operate as an attraction, because she earns so much money for the county of LA and the city of Long Beach itself. It would be economically irresponsible to not restore the Queen Mary. So that's why they're doing it. And, you know, but also because they really do care about this icon of a ship. And people all over the world, after the ship closed for the pandemic, just came out and, you know, and expressed how much they love the Queen Mary and how much they want to see the ship repaired and back in working order as a tourist attraction. So the city of Long Beach has heard those pleas, and they are acting to make sure the ship reopens. So I think all around, this is just all good news for the Queen Mary. Oh, I didn't even leave space for my milk. I'll just put my sugar first and then... Okay. Andrew, no, the Ghosts and Legends tour, it's not the same as it used to be, but they do have a haunted tour on the ship. Doc says, I don't understand what the Halloween mazes are. Are they seasonal attractions outside the Queen Mary? Can you talk a little about what directly inside of it? I've never been inside the haunt mazes of the Queen Mary, but what I can tell you is that there were seasonal haunt mazes inside the Queen Mary, and it was for the Dark Harbor events that happen every Halloween. And basically, if you've ever been to a haunt maze, like at a theme park or something, it's basically a bunch of plywood walls with sets every once in a while where something scary happens. And that's what they did on the Queen Mary, was they used a bunch of the corridors, former rooms and spaces on the lower levels of the ship, and then they created a haunt maze out of it. And it was damaging to the ship because, you know, sometimes these sets were drilled into place or hammered into place, and it was damaging the bulkheads, and, you know, everything was made of wood, so it was a fire hazard. They had to set up set lighting, and the set lighting was sometimes on really long extension cords that extended, you know, through the ship. And everybody knows when you overload extension cords that they could, you know, catch fire. They could short circuit and catch fire. Thankfully, that's never happened, but you just don't want that to be a potential problem, you know. So anyway, but those mazes were removed from inside the ship. But that doesn't mean that Dark Harbor won't be able to have mazes, because Dark Harbor has traditionally had mazes on the pier. So, probably next Halloween, when Dark Harbor happens, because it will, there will be mazes, but they'll happen right outside the ship on the dock. Jeffrey says, have you seen Gary Bembridge's cruise videos? He covers Cunard, and it's pretty good. I believe I have, yes. I watch a lot of Queen Mary 2 videos people post about the cruise, or just informational videos too. And so I've come across all kinds of YouTubers who do cruise ships and stuff like that as part of their channel. I'm pretty sure I've probably seen him. Fun Edit says, hey Alex, when do you think the Queen Mary will open again? I don't know for certain, but I have my suspicions it will open just prior to Christmas. So maybe Christmas Eve, or possibly even New Year's Eve. Double D says, does anyone know why lifeboats on modern ships are like on deck 4 instead of on the highest deck? Wouldn't putting boats higher up give the crew more time to launch? I don't know about giving people more time to launch. I think you want the launch time to be as fast as possible, not as slow as possible, especially when a ship is sinking. But what I can tell you is that on modern ships, it's on deck 4. I think you're talking about cruise ships. Because cruise ships... Well, let's just start with the other end of the argument. The reason why ocean liners had their lifeboats placed on the highest deck of the ship is actually to avoid the large waves that strike the ocean liners. Those waves can be sometimes 90 feet high. And so the last thing you want is for one of those big waves to come crashing against the ship, and then all of a sudden it knocks the lifeboats off the ship. Because the lifeboats are buoyant, so naturally when the wave hits them, they want to be, smashed, like, off the ship. So that's why ocean liners put them on the top deck. It really had nothing to do with anything else. It was just get them as high up away from the ocean as possible. But cruise ships don't have to worry about that. Cruise ships don't intentionally drive through storms. If they do, it's by accident or something that just really isn't avoidable. But even then, the storms that cruise ships face are never as bad as the deep ocean storms on the Atlantic. So there's never really a worry on a cruise ship that a large wave will knock the lifeboats off the ship. There just isn't, because the waves are usually never that big in the weather that cruise ships encounter. So, but if you look on the Queen Mary 2, you will see that the lifeboats have been placed significantly higher on the Queen Mary 2. So while they might be, deck 4 on a cruise ship, I believe on Queen Mary 2, they're on at least, I think, deck 7 or whatever the outer deck is on Queen Mary 2. But it is significantly higher. It's at least 20 feet higher up than on a normal cruise ship. And that's just to help get, the lifeboats up and away from those large ocean swells and waves that would hit the ship. Kevin Stewart says, what are the differences between the Titanic era and Queen Mary era of ocean liner? Not much, to be totally honest. By Queen Mary's era, they knew certain things on, So, for instance, on Queen Mary's era... No, I can't say that either. Let's see. Well, by Queen Mary's era, they had automatic davits. So basically it's like a electrically powered davits. Titanic didn't have that. But they could use the winches on Titanic's deck. So that's really not much different. Queen Mary had steam turbines, but so did Mauretania, and Mauretania came before Titanic. To be totally honest, there really wasn't much of a difference. I honestly can't think of a big difference, to be totally honest. Like, they had newer technologies, but that was really only to, like, make things more convenient. But even then, during Titanic's era, they had alternate technologies that did the same exact thing. So there really wasn't much of a difference, except just that things were a little more advanced during Queen Mary's time. So, yeah. They had more efficient boiler systems during Queen Mary's time, so they were able to get more steam out of every, drop of fuel burnt. Yeah. I guess that's all I have. There wasn't much of a difference. Dream, hope you're doing. Hey, Sarah. Good to see you again. Mark says, we will be blessed to have any area of Queen Mary open, all steps in the right direction. Yeah, I agree. Jacob says, your layout is looking great. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully in the coming weeks there'll be a lot more work happening on it. I'm so close to doing all the plaster work on it, honestly. Getting everything carved out, getting the mountains built and the hills and stuff like that. I'm so close to being able to do that. I'm so close, but it's just hasn't happened yet. Hasn't been much time. Doc, that's a good question. Doc asks, was the Queen Mary racially segregated? Also, any notable minority travelers? Just wondering if you researched this. So, that's a very good question. Queen Mary was not racially segregated. Partly because, you know, Queen Mary is a British ship, and in Great Britain at the time, they really didn't have segregation like that. I mean, there was certain amounts of segregation in terms of, like, social segregation. Like, you know, oh, this black man cannot marry my white daughter kind of thing. But they didn't have segregation in terms of, like, what we had in the United States, where it was, like, separate drinking fountains, separate bathrooms, separate areas, you know. They didn't have that on Queen Mary. So everybody kind of shared. And it was in that way that, you know, the Queen Mary was a very British ship. They just didn't really... It wasn't a thing to segregate people by their race, you know. It wasn't even a thing, even in Titanic's time, to segregate people by their race. So, I mean, as you guys probably have heard, Titanic had a black passenger. Or at least a couple of them. I think he was with his family. So... yeah, but yeah, they, you know, had a normal cabin just like everybody else. So, but yeah, there was no racial segregation on Queen Mary. Any notable minority travelers? Oh, gosh. Just trying to think off the top of my head. I'm drawing a blank, but if Steve is still here, he can try to answer that. Steve, if you're still here, were there any notable minority travelers? You know, people of color, that kind of thing. Probably like celebrities or something. I know there were. I just can't think of specific names at the moment. But I have run across them. K4RNA says, hello, Alex. Thanks for the recent dog video. Just getting ready to talk on the ham radio. Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the video, by the way. A says, hi, Alex. Would you ever consider getting a P.O. box for fan mail? I have considered it, yes. But I don't know. I'm not very comfortable with people sending me gifts. So that's kind of something that, yeah, I just don't know. There's some people that want to send me, like, Queen Mary artifacts and stuff just because they like my channel, and believe me, I do want those kinds of things, but but yeah, I don't like accepting gifts from people, so Ken says, I heard that day-to-day operations didn't run as smoothly on Queen Elizabeth compared to Queen Mary. Why do you think that was? From my understanding of it, was that Queen Mary had... She was specifically designed the way she was. and people had gotten used to working on her, and things ran smoothly. But on Queen Elizabeth, alterations were made. According to what I read, sometimes the placement of rooms or things on the ship just didn't make as much sense as it did on Queen Mary, because the Queen Elizabeth was basically the Queen Mary, but heavily altered. So, yeah. And then as well as the fact that a lot of the crew that went to work on Queen Elizabeth had previously worked on Queen Mary. So they were stuck in a position where they're operating a ship that by all means looks very similar, but when you need to like get around and do stuff as part of your job, it just is confusing. And so I think it stumped a lot of people. And I think that's why she kind of got that reputation for just not being as smooth of a ship to operate as the Queen Mary. But again, Queen Mary was custom built specifically, like all the ideas in mind for everything. And then Queen Elizabeth was just an alteration of that. And I think that just, in some cases, messed certain things up. In other cases, it made things a lot easier, like the sports deck, you know. But that's really more of a matter of convenience. So that's my understanding of it, as limited as it is. That's right. Steve says Liberace sailed on Queen Mary, which is true. Liberace sailed on Queen Mary. But he was not officially open about his sexuality, at least in the public eye. That's true. Justin Owens sailed to the U.S. from Berlin. Let's see. You're welcome, Doc. Yeah, that was a really good question. That's why I was excited to answer it. I was like, that's actually a really good question, because a lot of people don't know that Queen Mary just was not a segregated ship. Like, you know. The professor's here. Hey, professor. Hey, Alex, it's been a while since I watched your streams. Yeah, I know, it's been a while. But it's good to see you. Alright, let's have some of this. I haven't eaten anything yet. Yeah, Mark, Tim Tams are really, really good. Ken said, my grandfather was Liberace's personal banker. He said he was one of the nicest people he had ever met. Wow. Professor, I wouldn't say it's delayed, because they never announced an opening date anyway. They only said they were hoping to have it open by October, but that was their soonest expectation. When these construction projects happen, they come up with, the soonest reopening date, the middle that they're aiming for, and then the latest. So I believe that the latest reopening date they have planned is like January or February 2023. So basically that means if they miss their first what's the word am I think like the first point in time that they want to reopen the ship, like October, then at least they can aim for the one that they originally were, targeting, which is probably, December. And then if they miss that, then the latest, while still meeting their quota, would be like February. So yeah, but yeah, they never announced an opening date, so you can't really say that it's been delayed because they never announced an opening date. But yeah. Teresa says, do you like cats? Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to be the owner of a cat, but yeah. Ace says, I always wanted to know how many tugboats it took to dock the Queen Mary. It was based entirely on the weather. So if they had a really windy day, they might need, 6 tugboats. But generally speaking, they really only needed 2. 1 to work the bow and 1 to work the stern. So 2 hefty tugboats could do the job. But if it was a really windy day, I've heard stories of as many as 6 tugboats, working. So, but there's also been stories 2 times in the ship's history that the ship docked without the aid of tugboats. So if you really want to know the minimum, it's none. So I've always thought that was a pretty interesting one. Sarah, you're right. Cats own people. People don't own cats. Top impressive line says, hello, sorry I'm late. Alex, would you rather sail with Cunard line or White Star line? I would pick Cunard. Yeah, I would pick Cunard as well. I don't know. I just always liked Cunard ships more than White Star ships. Teresa, you have 20 cats? Oh my gosh. Christian. I got confused by your question at first, but wreaths with THS, not F. A reef is like a coral reef, but wreaths. So as far as I know, a wreath is only put down on the anniversary of Titanic sinking, and usually by a ship that's passing by. But to my knowledge, very few ships actually go that far north anymore, because after the sinking of Titanic, the I don't know who, but the powers that be moved the shipping lines about 100 miles south. So even the Queen Mary 2 no longer actually crosses over where Titanic sank. They are 100 miles south of that all the time. So they moved it like that because they just didn't want any chances of another repeat incident, you know. Because even though where Titanic was a very slim chance of running into an iceberg, nevertheless, they eventually did with Titanic. So they moved all the shipping lines further south to further prevent that from happening. Wyatt says, that is correct. They still do it on April 15th. There is a ship that goes specifically for that reason. Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like I was watching a documentary or something, and they mentioned that they go out there on the anniversary and then place a wreath. Wow, it's already 5. I really don't feel like I've been on this live stream for that long. But then again, that's what things are like when you do a lot of talking and stuff, that you kind of forget that time is just flying by. Alright, so get that there. Doc says, was tea time served in the rooms or in the restaurants on Queen Mary? I don't know much about British tea time, if it's a private event or not. On the Queen Mary, tea time was served anywhere. I mean, granted, they always encouraged people to go to the main lounge for tea time, but to my knowledge, I mean, well, okay, I suppose I should be more specific. If you were going to have, like, an official tea with all the pastries and sandwiches that are included, you would have to go to either the main lounges of the Queen Mary, or you would have to go to... Oh, there was one more spot on the ship that they did tea time. I think it was at... No... The observation bar, I think? No. There was one more space. But anyway, yeah. Mainly people went to the main lounges to have their, like, full, like, tea time. But what I do know is that if you wanted tea anywhere on the ship, you could pretty much order it from a steward, and they'll come bring you tea. It's just that you wouldn't be served all the sandwiches and stuff to go with it. But, you know, people would rent the deck chairs out on sun deck or on promenade deck, and they could sit and have tea. Or you could have tea at any one of the ship's restaurants. You could have tea in your stateroom. If you had tea in your stateroom, you could also request a sandwich or a sweet or something like that, and they'll bring it along with your tea any time of day that you want. Let's see. Yeah, but I mean, if you were just ordering tea, you could have it any time of day, anywhere on the ship, pretty much, except for the library, I think. But if you wanted to attend afternoon tea, they did it in the main lounges of the ship for all 3 classes. Yeah. Steve says the dining rooms would have been in the middle of setting tables for dinner service, so the dining rooms were closed at the time tea was served. Yeah, I figured, because I was almost about to say maybe the first class dining room, but then I thought, no, that can't be, because they would probably be setting up for dinner. So, yeah, but there was, besides the first class main lounge, I was thinking there was another place in first class where they did it, and I want to say it was the smoking room. But I don't know if that's accurate. There was 2 places in first class where they did the afternoon tea. Main lounge. Was it the long bar? No. No, definitely not the long bar. I don't know. Brian says, you may already know this, but the Titanic wreck is located 13 miles northeast of her last position that was sent out for the distress calls. I knew something along those lines. I didn't know it was 13 miles, but I did know that she had drifted a little bit further than her last distress calls, especially since when she went down into the ocean, that 2-mile fall basically had caused her to also drift as she dropped down. So, yeah. Justin says, did former White Star personnel serve on board, and did they enjoy it? Were there any former White Star Line officers on the bridge? Yes. So, if I am remembering correctly, it was Sir Edgar Britton was first officer. No, that was Carpathia. You know what? I don't know. I actually don't know. Yeah, I don't know if White Star Line personnel had moved to Cunard ships. As far as my understanding, maybe they fulfilled their contracts on the ships they were already on, and then after that they were let go. You know, because working on ships is a contract. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed to go on to the next ship. It just means that you're contracted to work one ship, and then, you know, maybe your contract doesn't get renewed for the next one. So it's possible that after ships like Olympic were scrapped, there was no need to bring them onto other ships that were Cunard, because Cunard already had staff for their own ships. It's a good question. I've never thought about that. Steve says, smoking rooms, drawing room on promenade deck. Ah, I see. Okay, so you could also get tea in the smoking rooms and drawing room. Okay. Teresa says, how was your Thanksgiving? It was wonderful. I got to spend it with my family. Very happy. Jimmy Lance says, "Hey Alex, I want to challenge you. Question 1, how long did it take for the Lusitania to sink?" Oh, I don't. 18 minutes, I think. And question number 2, what are the names of all the Gelfling clans in Dark Crystal Age of Resistance? Oh, gosh. So, let's see. There was the Drenchin, the... it's been 2 years since I've seen the show. Drenchin... That's all I can remember. That's honestly all I can remember right now. I used to know them all. Yeah, I was such a big fan. I used to know them. But I haven't seen the show in 2 years. I don't remember. Ken says, I hope when the Queen Mary reopens, they get better tour guides. Last time I was there, a tour guide made fun of people in period clothes and said they looked just like the ship too much, which I thought was really rude. Yeah, you know... So, I was really lucky because last time I was on Queen Mary, I had 2 tour guides that were really respectful of the ship. They really adored the Queen Mary. So that was really good. But I do remember one time, I think it was in... No, I'm remembering a YouTube video. Yeah, there were YouTube videos I saw of tour guides on Queen Mary. Some of them were not even properly wearing their uniform. They just looked really dumpy, and obviously, like, they, some of these people really didn't care about what they were doing. And you get that a lot with a lot of places. Sometimes you see people who just don't really care about, what job they're working at. But yeah, there were a few YouTube videos I've seen, just tour guides that just were not wearing their uniforms correctly. They really didn't take any time to explain stuff. Some of them were even mocking the information that they were giving to people. And, I was a former Disneyland tour guide. We had the strictest standards for being a tour guide at Disneyland. Unbelievably strict. And you could not stray from those set, those set codes, basically. And so when I saw these YouTube videos, occasionally with like a tour guide like that just really looked like they didn't care, it was really surprising, because a tour guide represents the place that they are touring. They embody that place. And that's what Disney taught us, in the tour department, was that, you guys aren't just tour guides, you're ambassadors for the Disney company and for Disneyland especially. You embody what Disneyland is more than anybody else here. So if your behavior is not on par, if your problem solving, your thinking, even the information you're giving is not up to the standards, then you are letting people down. And so that is what they really ingrained into our heads at Disney. And so I was very surprised to see some YouTube videos with tour guides that really just didn't care, or were openly ready to mock people, or mock the information itself. And make jokes out of it and stuff like that. And I was just kind of like, wow, that's, you know, I hope that those kinds of people don't return, you know. So, I don't know. Yeah. That's pretty funny, Tyler, about the live turkey. There we go. Yeah, the answer is Vapra, Drenchen, Groton, Stonewood, Dusan, Sifa, and Sprighton. Yeah, that's right. I can't believe it. I forgot all of that. Especially the Vapra. Because the Vapra clan I really liked. And the Groton. I couldn't... Yeah, when I was thinking of the Stonewood clan, I was thinking of the city, Stone in the Wood. And I was like, no, that's not the name of their clan. Their name of clan isn't Stone in the Wood. So I was just kind of like, I couldn't remember it at the time. But yeah. The Jagoti shows says there would have been staff like stewards, musicians that definitely would have kept working on Cunard ships after the merger, but captains, deck officers lost their superiority. Hello, Mike. Ken says, I'm sure there were good ones, but the last few tours I took, the guides were just apathetic. But judging by the companies that ran the ship in the past, I'm not surprised. Yeah, you know, it's also possible that a lot of people just, you know, were really miserable in their job. Maybe they weren't being paid enough, you know, that kind of thing. So that could have been part of it. Ken says, if I ever moved back to SoCal, I'd love to be a Queen Mary tour guide as a part-time gig. Would love to be an ambassador. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Brian says, what's your opinion on Bob Iger returning as CEO? I'm very happy about it. I think that's a lot better than having, you know, the other guy, Chapek, as CEO. Bob Iger, I don't agree with everything he does, but he does know how to run Disney, that's for sure. You know, so at least he won't run the company into the ground. You know, maybe he'll make decisions that people don't agree with, but at least he won't run the company into the ground. Andrew says, were half the mazes on the ship rooms or storage or areas they stripped for the mazes? All of the above. Some were storage, some were rooms that were stripped for the maze, and some were just already empty. Teresa says, have you ride a horse? No, I don't ride horses. Jimmy says, how long is Queen Mary? 1,019 and a half feet. And how did the hunter Skekmal die? He died because his counterpart, the archer, I'm trying to think of his real name. I don't remember his real name. But the archer, he flung himself off of the off of the balcony of the place where the Skeksis and the Urdu were living. And so because he had killed himself, that had caused Skekmal to die as well, because one cannot live while the other one is dead, so... Justin Sim says, I've never worked for Disney, loved their classics, but they're monstrous about their corporate takeovers. Yeah, they're actually pretty aggressive about that. Ace has just realized Disney's been ran by people named Bob for the past 8 to 12 years. 15, in fact, because Bob Iger took over in 2005. So, no, it's way more than 15. 2005 to now is 17 years, so, wow. 17 years, my gosh. Ozzy says, has your dad ever ridden a horse? I don't know. He might have. There's so much about my dad I don't know. Ken says, have you ever thought about doing post-live stream trivia like Sam from Historic Travels does at the end of his? That's a good question. I don't know. I guess I just don't... I've thought about it, to be totally honest. I have considered maybe I should do, like, live streams where I do trivia and stuff. But I'm not sure I want to. Yeah. I don't have a better reason than that. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't have a better reason than that. I just don't want to. So... yeah. I wish I had something like more like smart to like say like, oh well, but you know, it's not. I don't have a good reason. I guess I just don't want to. Teresa says, Alex, what's your last name? Why would I ever answer that? I would never ever answer that. See, Gump Happen says, any updates to the railroad coming? Oh yeah, actually yes. You can actually see already in the corner of the railroad screen the workings of the tunnel that I was constructing. So, yeah, work is being done. My father is building a building for the town, and I am working on the various tunnels of the layout. Once the tunnels are designed and built, then I can start working on plastering the whole thing and sculpting out the mountains and the rockwork. So there's still a lot to do, but it'll be exciting in the months to come because there'll be a lot of transformational changes to the layout. So I'm really excited for it, but I love my trains. I'm just such a nerd, you know, like, I love my trains. J-Rod, thank you so much. I need to sneeze. Oh, gosh. Aha, I suppressed the sneeze. Jimmy says, final quizzes. If you get these right, you win the whole game. How did the Queen Elizabeth sink? Oh, that's easy. She caught fire, and they flooded her with a ton of water, and all that water built up inside the ship and sank the ship. Number 2. What is the name of the alien planet the Gelfling live on? Thra, spelled Thra. I win. Andrew Fiocco says, why did they create the Dark Harbor, or AKA, back then, the Queen Mary shipwreck? Well, to be totally honest, they had good reason to. I mean, when it comes to Halloween events, the Queen Mary makes a pretty cool backdrop for Halloween events. You know, it was a very profitable idea. In fact, it is profitable. Every time they do the Dark Harbor or the shipwreck, it's been very profitable. So, but they do it to celebrate Halloween. You know, people love haunt mazes and stuff like that. So it was a very profitable idea. It's just that I think Dark Harbor should stay on the dock, because when it's installed on the ship, it does damage to the ship. So, and, you know, and plus, the Queen Mary is a very dignified ship. I don't want to, you know, I don't want her dignity to be destroyed by some hokey haunt maze that happens every year. But I don't mind that if it's on the pier, you know, like, it's a profitable thing and it earns the ship a lot of money every season. So, you know, I think it's good, you know. Let's see. Oh, Steve's got to go. He's going to have dinner. All right, see you later, Steve. Ken says, I'm staring at my train running right now. Had a crappy day at work today. Model trains are so therapeutic. They really are. Yeah, they really are. You know, I can stare at this thing going around and around for hours. I know because I've done it before. I don't know what it is. I just love watching trains, you know. And so on occasion, if I have time, I'll even go on YouTube and I'll look up videos of other people's train layouts and watch that for a while, you know. It's what train nerds do. We watch trains just rolling around and stuff like that. That's why I like steam trains so much, because you can see the driving rods moving and all the wheels turning and stuff. Like, modern diesel trains, I like them to a certain extent, but I don't like modeling them on a layout because they just don't have that much kinetic movement the way a steam train does, you know? Plus, I like the older stuff. I like the Victorian era with all the Old West look and stuff like that. So yeah. Jimmy says, correct, you win the game. Here, now you get... How many zeros is that? That's 1,000, million, billion, trillion... $10 quadrillion. Wow. I would love to accept $10 quadrillion. You know what I would do with $10 quadrillion, everybody? Well, first of all, I would make huge donations to cancer research, child health, and stuff like that, homeless people, and the environment. But I would also make sure large sums of money went towards the restoration of the Queen Mary. I would also make sure that that other large sums of money went towards volunteer work for other things I really like, such as the Spruce Goose and, you know, things like that. And other scenic railroads that I like. But then, of course, a large sum of money would also go towards me. But yeah. So, $10 quadrillion. Christian says, hey Alex, have you ever watched the TV show The Dukes of Hazzard? No, I have not. Jimmy says, I wish you can have Cunard afternoon teas every day. It's so relaxing and calming and fun. Oh, thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, you know, I would love to, but it does take a lot to set up for these tea times. That new webcam I have, it's very sensitive to... Well, not sensitive to light. It's not sensitive enough to light. So I've actually had to light up that corner with an extra light, which I only usually use 2 lights to light up that area that you guys are watching. but I've had to set up a third one because the camera is just, it needs a lot of light. And so that was even more stuff I had to set up today. Sarah says, with that much money, you could restore the entire thing. I know. I would sign a check to restore the entire thing and to have them reserve me a space on, like, C deck or something where I could have my own private cabin. Gump says, have you ever thought about putting the Queen Mary book on Audible? One, since nobody's put it up, and two, since it's been such a hassle to read. No, because while it's on YouTube, I can call it entertainment. But once it's on somewhere like Audible, that's just plain breaking the law. I can't do that. Yeah. Sarah says, I always miss them. I think you mean the live streams. Now I'm snowed in working from home, so I'm happy to catch the stream today. Oh my gosh. You're snowed in? I didn't know it was... Well, you know what? I did hear something about snowy weather. I kind of wish it would snow here. Sarah says, isn't the snow heading your way now? We're getting rain, but not snow. The temperatures here just haven't dropped low enough. But it would be nice, you know, wake up tomorrow morning and see snow outside. That would be really nice. Jimmy, well, I think I discovered the reason why the views were going down was because I was producing a lot of videos on various topics, but the one thing everybody on the channel wanted to see was ocean liner content, which was something I wasn't putting out too much of. I was definitely doing Queen Mary stuff, but there is such thing as putting up too much Queen Mary stuff and then everybody not wanting to see it. So, it's a balancing act. And so I think I discovered that what I need to do is put more ocean liner content up that is not Queen Mary related. Which is hard to do because I know so little about it. So. But the next video I'm working on is about Johann van Oldenbarnevelt. And its tragic sinking and well, not sinking, but burning. Did it sink? I don't think it sank. It just burned. Maybe it sank. I'll have to look at my notes again. Dangerous Brian says, if you had $10 quadrillion, you could also buy a nice house and have a separate room as a studio for your live streams. That's true. Mike says, tomorrow is December already. I know, this year has flown by. You know, I moved in this apartment in February, and I can't believe I've been here for 10 months. It's unbelievable. It feels like I only moved in like a few months ago. Wait, do I have that right? Yeah, 10 months. I struggle with math in my head. I do not like Minecraft. Sorry, Teresa. I do not like Minecraft. Mr. Blue says, in my current time zone, it is already December, so I'm basically from the future. It's December for the professor as well. Yeah, for me, it is 5:34 p.m. Geez, there's that number again, 534. Nobody believes me, but the number 534 has followed me everywhere since 2020, when I last visited the Queen Mary. It has been so odd. It's like it shows up everywhere. For those of you that don't know, the significance of 534 is that is the job number that the Queen Mary had at John Brown Shipyards. 534. All right. Time to finish this last bit of tea. Christian says, Alex, why was the Queen Elizabeth II retired? She's a modern ocean liner like the Queen Mary II. Not exactly. The Queen Elizabeth II was a very old ocean liner. You know, she launched in 1969. So she was already, like, just, you know, by the 2000s, she was just outdated, you know. And they had upgraded her interiors many, many times. But she could not offer all the things that the Queen Mary II could offer. She was not modern by any means. And the cost of trying to upgrade her yet again, including her engines, because her engines needed replacing, all of it would have just costed way too much money. And when it wouldn't have been worth it because she didn't have enough stateroom to square footage ratio like the Queen Mary II does. So they were able to make a lot of money off the Queen Mary II because she has a lot of staterooms for the amount of space that they fill. So, but yeah, QE2, yeah, was in service for 40 years, and she was an old ship by the time that they retired her. If the Queen Mary reopens, sometime in December, I'm going to see if my friend Chris can go film a lot of what is available to see, because I want to make more videos, obviously, on the Queen Mary. I have I have so much stuff I want to make, but I need specific video footage of specific things. So, I'm going to see if he can film a lot of that. Maybe film like a short little tour of the ship that I can use for my channel. So he's already offered to do that stuff for me. So I'll see if he'll do it. And then when the Queen Mary is fully open, when the Queen Mary is fully open, like in the hotel area as well, I am going to try to make my way down to Southern California to stay a few nights aboard the ship so I can do a lot of filming of my own and, and just try to document the ship as best I can so I can make a lot more stuff for you guys in the future. Yeah. So that is my plans for the near future when it comes to the Queen Mary. So I'm excited. I really can't wait for the ship to reopen. There is just so much stuff I want to see. I want to see how much they've worked on the ship so far. I want to see like what stuff that they've done. What if they've changed out carpets? Where have they changed out carpets? If they've fixed light fixtures, where have they fixed the light fixtures? I'm so curious to see it all. And then of course they're going to be doing a lot of aesthetic work while the ship is open. So there might still be a lot of chipping paint and stuff like that, peeling paint while the ship is reopened. But they said that they are going to get to that over the coming months. They probably missed their opportunity for painting the ship because when you paint the exterior of a ship, it needs to be a very specific weather. If it's too hot, the paint will eventually just peel off the ship. If it's too cold, the paint may not apply correctly, especially if it's extremely humid. So that could also affect the painting. So I think it's just California's had really wacky weather recently. So Southern California, I should say. Teresa says, how old are you? I am 30 years old, unfortunately. Not getting any younger. RMS Carpathia would have been a nice little museum ship. Yeah. Have you seen, Alex, the Butte Cunard of RMS Britannic? There's that question again. It's like the same question I get asked on every live stream. Why? Sarah's like, you're 30, young one? I feel like I'm in my mid-30s, honestly. I just, they say that you're as young as you feel. So maybe I should start thinking young and feel young again. I don't feel young anymore. Like, the way I felt in my early 20s, I felt like I was made of some kind of invincible material, you know? But now I just feel like everything makes me ache and, you know, it's like crazy. Like sometimes I'll be like on a walk with my sister and all of a sudden I'll kind of limp and she's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, my hips are hurting. It's like really ridiculous. Like, you know, like it's just, I don't feel young anymore. But maybe if I start thinking that I am, I'll revert back. Let's see. Sarah says, I'm 43 and I still feel like a kid. It's fine. A lot of 21-year-olds. Let's see. Yeah, everybody who's watching, put in the chat how old you are. If you're comfortable doing that. I'm interested to see the age of all my viewers because YouTube tells me the age of my viewers, but I have a feeling it's not very accurate. Let's see. 35, 21, 32, 46, 22, 16, 20, 43, 43, 21, 28, 12. Jimmy, you're 12? I didn't know that. Mark says 58. I'm 58, 44. I guess YouTube really is accurate then. It says that most of my viewers are between the ages of 35 and 55. That's the majority. And if you split that up, the majority of that majority is 35 to 45. So I guess YouTube is accurate. 20, 58. 3 years old. Wow, you must be a genius at this point. $35, $41, $14. Why is this? I like saying I'm 116. Oh my gosh. Yeah, 358-year-olds. Wow. Ryan says, I never gave YouTube my age. Yeah, I can understand. Teresa's 21. Linda's here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I have a lot of the older viewers on my channel, I guess. With some really young folks here. 13, not 3. Okay. I thought you were 3 years old, Mr. Blue. I was like, you must be a genius for a 3-year-old. Oh my gosh. But you know, when you think about it, there is a good, like, even spread. I mean, from people as young as 12, all the way to people in, let's see, in their 60s. I think somebody was in their 70s. Maybe I didn't look at that right. But yeah, there's a good spread of all kinds of age groups here. Hey, Goofy Rules, I didn't know you were here. Yeah, so it's actually kind of nice because it shows that there is an interest all through the ages for ocean liners and other old stuff, you know. Linda, oh my gosh, fell asleep. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I often worry about like what will happen to these subjects, these ocean liners, trains, anything steam powered. Because, well, I mean, I know for one thing, as a model railroader, you know, I've been watching the model railroad industry, and at least in the United States, the popularity of it is going down. One, because everybody is switching to video games. Not to mention that there's video game simulators of trains. But the other reason is because the model railroading hobby is becoming unbelievably expensive. You know, when I was a kid, if I wanted to buy one of these passenger cars, it probably would have costed maybe $20, which would have been an exorbitant price when I was a kid. That would have been a ridiculous price. But still, it was affordable. In this day and age, one of those cars goes for like $65. And not only is that an exorbitant price, but money doesn't go as far as it used to anymore. So that's also like, you know, you're giving away like the amount of money for like a meal for a small family, just for one of those plastic cars on the end of the train. And so it's for reasons like that that younger people are not getting into model railroading, because it's just way out of their price range, and even the cheapest quality stuff is not cheap enough, you know. So it is sad because this is a hobby I really love, but it's also other things too. When it comes to history, like ocean liners and stuff, you know, I worry about how are we going to get people engaged in the history of the Queen Mary with the younger audiences, because, well, I mean, let's face it, people have shorter attention spans. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. But people have shorter attention spans these days, especially the younger folks, you know. And I also don't think it's a secret that social media, like TikTok, for instance, delivers you content that is only a few seconds long, and you can flip through it as you please. I mean, heck, I've been on YouTube's Shorts feature, so it's a feature that's just like that, where everybody posts a video that's less than a minute long, and you can flip through it. And I'll admit, when I get through that, sometimes I just flip through videos because even though a video may only be 10 seconds long, that first second I'm just not interested in it, and I'll flip to the next one. And that right there is the problem, is we now have a group of people who will only sit through 1 second of something and lose interest entirely. And I'm guilty of that too. But I think that's one of the reasons why doing history is so difficult on YouTube, because as every year goes by, people have less and less desire to sit through something that long. So, you know, I always wonder what can we do to spark people's interest in stuff like the Queen Mary again. And I think mainly it has to do with the ship itself. I think mainly making the ship itself more interactive with its younger audiences. But when it comes to documentaries and stuff, perhaps the answer lay in really short video segments that really pop and get the information to people in a very exciting way. It has to compete with all those twerking videos and cat videos. So, yeah. I'm just reading everybody's comments. Mike says, I had a model train when I was a kid. My grandpa used it under the Christmas tree. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done that before. Chris says, one of my favorite hobbies was target shooting, but that's gotten expensive also. Yeah. Everything's getting expensive now. Teresa, Winston Churchill, I don't remember his exact age, but I think he was in his 70s when he died. Jimmy. Yeah, no, I don't plan to, like, dumb down my videos at all. It's just, I think I have to also learn to make content that is designed for people with short attention spans. So basically what I'm saying is I have to, like, do a little bit of a mixture. So while I make some videos that are, like, documentary style, I think I have to make some videos that are just very short, quick bursts of information. So I think that's one of the ways that I can evolve as well. Yeah, Ocean Liner Designs does a lot of really great shorts. Jacob says, I love to learn about history. It kills me when I hear people say they don't care about history anymore. Yeah, that kills me too. Every time someone says, oh, I don't care about history, it's just a little part of me dies. It's just sad, you know? And some people, for some people, it's much more than they just don't care about history. It's more like a lot of people want to, like, just stop people from saving history. Like, there's certain things, like when I talk about the Queen Mary, there are people who are like, I don't care how much money the ship makes or blah, 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 just sink her. It's like, why? Well, because she's just a relic of the past. So? You know, like, you can learn from the past, and you can still enjoy things from the past. You know, like, not everybody wants to live in the current, you know, the current climate, you know. Some people want to just kind of get away for a few minutes and experience what it was like to live in the Art Deco era, you know, or at least the best part of the Art Deco era, you know, minus the the global depression, but you know, that kind of thing, you know. And so a ship like the Queen Mary is a perfect opportunity to just kind of pretend for a little while. There's nothing wrong with pretending, you know, as long as you understand the difference between, you know, what is glorified versus what is real, then I think it's okay to do some pretending now and then, you know. It's one of the reasons why I do these live streams. I can sit here with this Cunard set and just kind of pretend that I'm talking to some friends while I'm on the ocean sailing with the Queen Mary, you know, if only for just a moment out of my day. And so I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with just enjoying something from the past. I mean, I've visited many museums. I've been to forts and things like that where lots of death and tragedy has occurred. But I don't sit there only focusing on the tragedy and going, oh, well, we should just forget this all ever happened. Like, you know, I want to be immersed in it as much as I can, you know, and really just try to feel, you know, this location and just understand it from a deep, heartfelt point of view. And really, some of the only ways you can do that is by visiting these places. So some people want to get rid of the Queen Mary because they just think, oh, she's old and she's useless. Unfortunately, that's the mindset behind a lot of the reasons why we don't have a lot of historical stuff to this day. So, really sad. Top Impressive says, Alex, I heard that after the Queen Mary collided with HMS Curacao in 1942, she was ordered to continue ahead without picking up the survivors. Yes, because the Queen Mary at the time was carrying 15,000 troops at that time, and they were traveling through submarine-infested waters. If the Queen Mary had stopped to pick up survivors, they would have put everybody on board the ship at risk. Imagine if a submarine had suddenly surfaced and fired torpedoes. Not only would you have the 300 men that died from the sinking of Curacao, but then you'd also have the 15,000 men who were innocently aboard the Queen Mary waiting for it to be underway again. So, for those reasons, the ship could not stop for anything or anyone, not until she reached her destinations. And so, yeah, during an inquiry into the incident, they had asked the captain of the Curacao, Captain Boutwood, they said, what did the Queen Mary do? And he said, she steamed on. And they said, was that the right thing for her to do? And Captain Boutwood said, ultimately, yes, it was the right thing for the Queen Mary to do. And it's true. So yeah, that's why she didn't pick up survivors from the incident. Teresa, to answer your question, no, I haven't. Wyatt, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Justin, I like to think that when I learned something about history, you know, that's something that I could later pass on to somebody else who might be interested in hearing it, you know, and help keep that kind of thing alive for other people, you know. So, especially a way of life. You know, I think about my great-grandmother all the time, you know. In her youth, she was living in the midst of the Art Deco era. And just to think, like, all the amazing beauty and architecture that surrounded her back then, you know, it's almost like when I'm surrounded by Art Deco, I can kind of, you know, imagine being in her shoes and, you know, and just like seeing the world through the eyes of the 1930s, you know. It's a really interesting perspective, and it really grounds you and teaches you something about the time frame in which you live in currently. I've learned a lot about myself and through this time and this timeline I live in, you know, by looking at it through perhaps the perspective of the past, you know. So we can really learn a lot of stuff by really learning about the past. Hello, Brian Rock. Rudolph, Valentino, good to see you. Glad you're having fun. Goofy Rolls says, my mom just went to afternoon tea. Where did that go? On the Sapphire Princess yesterday. She still loves it. Nice. Daniel says, hey, Alex, were there other passengers aboard Queen Mary that were of different races, like Asian, Hispanic, or African Americans? Absolutely, there were. You know, we were just talking earlier today, earlier in this live stream about a few of the passengers. One, I can't scroll up to go find his name, but Steve was here and he talked about one of the passengers who was African American. But yeah, the Queen Mary had many different passengers of different races. And we also talked about how the Queen Mary was not a segregated vessel. So nobody of any race was ever segregated from other races on board the Queen Mary. So it was a very, very equal ship. I mean, just imagine it. You got the same stewards, the same waiters, the same hosts and assistants that helped the rich white folks as they were the people that helped, I don't know, the poor Hispanic folks or something. You know, I mean, not even Hispanic, depending on where they were traveling. It doesn't matter where they're traveling. But anyway, you know, it was not a segregated ship. Everybody was treated equally on the Queen Mary. And especially the Jewish passengers, you know, like I said, they had the synagogue, which was something very good for them because a lot of passengers, they were able to do, for Sundays, they were able to have Protestant services and Catholic services. And then if you were Jewish, you had the synagogue. I don't think there were very many other religious people that like traveled aboard the Queen Mary, at least not in large numbers, like Islamic people, for instance. There probably weren't that many large numbers of Islamic passengers, so there was no specific place where they could do their prayer. I guess they would just do their prayers in their staterooms, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, having a synagogue, being the Queen Mary being the first ocean liner to be built with a synagogue, was a very big deal. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to learn about the Queen Mary. There was no prejudice on the Queen Mary. Oh, nice. Jacob, you use history for layout ideas. That's good. Brian Rock says, why should old stuff be torn apart? Yeah, exactly. Why? If you can save it and if you can use it to kind of either show off its beauty or teach its history, there should be no reason why you should have to, destroy old stuff, you know? K4RNA, thank you so much for the donation. I need one more tree for the railroad. Ah, yeah, the trees. I'm trying to decide about, what trees to do, because I know that you've donated for trees in the past as well. So I've kept that donation so that way I can purchase trees. So I'm trying to make my decision on, whether I should make my own or do a combination of making my own versus buying a few. When you buy the trees, they don't look as realistic as they could be if you made them by hand. But making them by hand is a really tedious process. But in the end, I think that it's best not to rush these things. So I figure maybe I'll just make my own trees and make them the way I want them to look, you know? And if it takes a long time to make them, then it takes a long time to make them. Can't make them all at once, but I know my last layout had somewhere around 250 trees. Yeah, my last layout. And my last layout was not a forest like this one. I imagine this one will take, even if I'm conservative with it, just about 250 trees. And that's using them conservatively. Well, no, I guess maybe if I was very, very conservative about it, I could get away with 200 trees. Oh, who knows? I could probably get away with a lot less. I forget that this is O scale, so the trees are really big. We'll see. I'm going to try to do what I can to not spend so much money on trees. But, yeah. I do know that with the money that you've donated, K4RNA, towards the trees, I want to at least create, 2 special trees, or maybe just one really special tree, one that I took a lot of time to, carve out or something. Like a redwood or something. That'd be kind of cool. It would be, the tallest tree on the whole layout, or something like that. Because I think the tallest trees on the layout will be 8 inches tall. If they're too tall, then it will just make the layout look too small. So I might decide to make 8-inch trees, but then the tallest tree on the layout would be 12 inches or something. And it would be a redwood or whatever, and I could make it extra special to kind of represent the money that you specifically donated towards the trees. Ooh, I'm getting behind on these comments. Jimmy Lance says, my grandparents were born in the 30s, so they were around the time when the Queen Mary was around. Cool to think about. Yep. Carrie says, what brand is the cool hot pot from Amazon? I have no idea what that is. Isaiah says, do you like Amtrak, Alex? It's not my favorite thing, but I mean, Amtrak is pretty okay. When you mean riding it or something, it's pretty comfy. The chairs, I remember the chairs being very comfy. Top Impressive says, the 105th anniversary of the Halifax explosion is coming on December 6th. Maybe that's something I should maybe try to work on. Oh, but I'm sure a lot of other ocean liner channels are probably going to make a video about it. Well, I should still try. Brian says, what do you think of Brightline? You're talking about the Florida train, right? I don't have much of an opinion about it because I'm not a fan of modern trains. I really just like old steam trains. Justin says, I also appreciate the questions relating to segregation and diversity on the Queen Mary. Yeah, I mean, it's always nice because I think that a lot of folks like would probably assume that if you were a minority that you were probably just not treated well on Queen Mary. Like any other place, you probably wouldn't have been treated well. But there was a very important point that everybody was treated well on Cunard ships, you know. That was just what they did. You were never treated differently, no matter what. So I think that was what was really cool about Cunard, at least. I don't know if it was the same for White Star Line, but for Cunard, for sure. Chris, yeah, we were talking about that earlier, how there was a black family aboard Titanic. They were second-class passengers. Teresa, you keep asking the same question. The answer, again, is no, I haven't. Rudolph says, visited the Queen Mary a long time ago, around 1980. So glad it's being properly cared for now. Yeah, I love the Queen Mary. I hope I get to see her next year. That'd be really nice. She didn't study to panel to panel. Jacob says, what theme are you doing for your layout? It's going to be like a Pacific Northwest theme from the 1890s. So it's probably going to be a small whistle-stop town that is kind of like a center for local industry to kind of bring their supplies, and then they'll put together the trains at this town to send them off to like Portland or Seattle. So that's kind of my idea. It's not going to be based off of any real place in particular. It's definitely going to be made up, but that's kind of my thought. Is the time frame is the 1890s, and it's various industries that bring their supplies to be put together into larger trains to be taken off to other cities and stuff. I know that there will be supplies coming in from logging and from coal mining, and then from industrial manufacturing, and those will come together, and livestock as well. So 4 different types of industry will assemble trains at this town. So they'll come in smaller trains with, like, let's say a load of logs or a load of cattle or a load of tools and equipment, and then it gets brought to the main town and assembled into a larger train to be carried away. And then there's also passenger services, so people going from long distances of the wilderness to, let's say, Portland, they'll take this train that's going past right now. It'll be a large passenger train, and it'll be kind of like a weekly train kind of thing. So as you can see, I'm kind of piecing together little bits of it in my head. Marie or Mary says, what's your favorite historical tidbit of the Queen Mary? My favorite historical tidbit. Well, what a lot of people don't know about the Queen Mary is that the Queen Mary was directly involved in the success of one of the battles of World War II, one of the key battles, that is, at least. She was there for the first battle at El Alamein, and she delivered 10,000 American troops to help overcome Erwin Rommel's forces, who were trying to lead their advancement towards the Suez Canal to choke off the Western powers from being able to access the 2 different oceans. So if it wasn't for the Queen Mary delivering those much-needed 10,000 troops right at the moment that the British 8th Army was being pushed up against the sea, they wouldn't have won that battle. And the Axis forces could have taken control of the Suez Canal, which would have been a huge disaster for the war effort. So the Queen Mary helped win that battle directly, you know. So that is one of those cool things that not many people know about unless you've seen my video on it. And it's just one of my favorite little fun facts about the Queen Mary. Justin says, would you create a kind of dockside port for your railroad model eventually? And would you have an ocean liner there? Would you think the Queen Mary would be far too big scale-wise for... Oh, yes. So, let me put it this way. Okay. So, if I tried to build the Queen Mary in the same scale as this layout, the Queen Mary would be 25 feet long. This layout is only 8 feet long. So, yeah, there's no way that I could build the Queen Mary to scale with this. She would be 25 feet long. So, that's pretty big. But there will be a dock, but it will be for very small boats. Just very tiny little, like, rafts on the river. Because there is a river back there. You can't see it from this angle, but there's a river way back there. And, because this model is designed so... I know it's up against the wall, but it was designed so you could walk around the model and see it from all angles. So, because of that, you never want to design everything to be immediately visible from one angle. You want it to be a mystery. You want people to walk around it and see different things. So, one of those things is the river, which you can't see very easily from this angle. You'd have to go around it. But the river will have logs coming in for the logging industry, and it will have small boats that are delivering fish and stuff to the town. You know, maybe they're fishing for local salmon or something and delivering salmon or trout and delivering that to the town, you know, for them to eat. So there might be things like that, but nothing big like an ocean liner, especially because this takes place in the 1890s. So you wouldn't really see an ocean liner like Queen Mary there. You might see something along the lines of maybe a Pacific Ocean liner, like the Princess Fleet, but not necessarily the Princess Fleet, because they were in the 1900s. It would be much smaller ocean liners. RMS Olympic was almost involved in the Halifax explosion. Yeah, that one I knew. Goofy Roll says, one thing people do not like, who don't like history, forget is that people who are pretty much the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You can learn a lot about today by studying yesterday. Very wise words, yes. You can learn a lot about today by studying yesterday. That is one of the most profound things I've found about just general history. Like, not even world history, but also just, like, the history of people, places, and things. You can learn so much about the modern world around us just by learning about its history. Justin says, maybe you will have a Canadian Pacific coastal liner docked at your railroad whistle stop station. Just my idea. I don't know. I really don't know. There's no room to build that on here at all. It'd be nice, but this layout is so tiny as it is. I really don't think there's any room for that. Yeah. And the Canadian Pacific ships, see. Would probably be almost 3 feet long in comparison to this layout. So even if I wanted to build a very small one, it would still be like 2.5 or 3 feet long, which is a really big ship. That's bigger than my Titanic model that you guys occasionally see on my channel. Way too big. Yeah, way too big. Oh yeah, Derpy. The Nazis would have definitely destroyed Olympics. Ken says, what about one of the Davy Crockett-style boats for your train? That's possible. Yeah, that's possible. I think I could fit that on the layout somewhere. That's actually a good idea. I didn't think about doing that. I was like, huh, maybe I'll just do, like, rafts or something. But then I'm like, after you said that, I'm like, actually, that is possible. I could build something along those lines on my layout. Derpy, yeah, Princess Sophia would work for the theming, but there's just no place to install it. Like, there's no room on the layout anymore. Like, yeah, I don't know how else to put it. There's no room to install a dock for a boat, you know, like the Princess Sophia. Again, that would be like 2.5 to 3 feet long. That's huge. Yeah, I do not have the space for that on here. This may look like a big layout, but when you take into account the scale of the layout, it is a really small layout. Like, really, really small. So, like a house, a normal size house on this layout is like that big. That's how big it is compared to this layout. So, it's... yeah, there's no way I could fit something like that on here. It would just be huge. You know what? Actually, a princess ship would be much larger than 3 feet. What is... okay, so... it's 12... 48. So, 50. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, a princess ship would actually be 5 feet in length, according to the scale of this layout. 5 feet in length. That is huge. This layout is only 8 feet long. So, if I had built a princess ship to go with this layout... it would be at least 5 feet long, if not 6 feet, because if you're talking about a 250-foot long ship, that's 5 feet. If you're talking about a 300-foot long ship, that's going to be 6 feet. So there is no room for that on this layout. No room for that. See you later, Linda. Jimmy says, Alex, you're one of my favorite YouTubers. Thanks, Jimmy. That means a lot to me. Believe it or not, it really does. Chris says, have you ever seen Russia in miniature model railroad? It has almost everything goes on regular day life in Russia. I think I've seen that. Yes, it was very impressive. Justin says, I love listening or relaxing and listening to these live chats. Thanks. I love doing it. I love doing these chats because I could just talk to people, you know, like I could just talk about like whatever interests we have and talk about trains and ocean liners and stuff until we're both blue in the face. I love it, you know. I think that a lot of people, they're not used to a YouTuber just being this genuine who just likes to talk, you know, like, I think that they're missing that, you know, and so that's something I'm very happy to be a part of, is just being able to talk to people. I appreciate every one of the viewers who watch my channel and stuff like that. You know, you guys are more than just like a number to me. Like, you guys are like my extended friendships, you know, all over the world. So, see you later, Ken. See you later, Jimmy. And Rudolph as well. Yeah, everyone's leaving. I gotta leave too. It's almost been 2.5 hours. Jeez. But I have so much fun doing this, so that's why 2.5 hours later I'm still sitting here. Oh, that's funny, Sarah. Yeah, time to get going, you guys. So I'm gonna say bye for now. There will be a video coming out either this Friday or Saturday. Oh, December 10th is going to be another live stream with me and Steve. So we're going to do a Queen Mary, or actually ocean liner Q&A. So if you guys have questions about ocean liners, any kind of ocean liner, it doesn't have to be the Queen Mary, but if definitely Queen Mary, that's the one thing we're both very knowledgeable about. But if you have any questions about any kind of ocean liners, either submit them via email on my account. My email address is below every single video and live stream, or you can I'll put a post out on the channel on the community tab, and then asking people what their questions are. And then on December 10th, we'll do a live stream that Saturday, and we'll do the Q&A. We'll do a full presentation on the answers to these questions with photographs and information and stuff like that. It'll be really cool. So I think you guys will have a great chance to ask questions and learn stuff about ocean liners. So I know I will. But anyway, folks, let's see. Awesome. Anyway, folks, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you on Sunday's Tea Time live stream. And yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.